people talk about war, we consider its cost. On February 24, 2022, Russia started a war it intended to finish in 3 days. Today, this war is in its 5th year and has become the most expensive mistake in this country's modern history. The price, hundreds of thousands of lives, hundreds of billions of dollars, and minus decades of the future. But the most important thing is different. Almost this entire bill was presented in the very first week of the Russo-Ukrainian war. This video is not about morality and not about who's right. This video is about the cost, about how specific decisions by specific people in 7 days turned a limited operation into a war of attrition from which there is no longer a cheap exit. We will talk about money, losses, time, and destroyed opportunities, because these are precisely the currency of war. The night of February 23, 2022, Vladimir Putin makes the final decision to begin a full-scale invasion. The plan, approved in a narrow circle, is built on a key assumption: the Ukrainian state will not withstand the first strike. According to intelligence assessments that form the basis of the operation, Ukraine's leadership was supposed to leave the country within 72 hours. The armed forces to lose control, and the population to take a passive or loyal position. They said Ukrainian society is demoralized. They got mass mobilization and self-organization at the city and district level. They said Kiev will fall in 3 days. They got a failed offensive already in the first 72 hours. They said the operation will be cheap. They got the most expensive war in modern Russia's history. Already in the first hours, it becomes clear the key calculation doesn't work. Ukraine's leadership doesn't flee. Volodymyr Zelensky remains in Kiev and publicly refuses evacuation. This is not a symbol and not PR. This is the point at which the entire political scenario of the war collapses. Because an operation against the state was planned, but a war against society began. Russian troops enter from the north through the Chernobyl zone, from the east, through Kharkiv region, from the south, from Crimea. The tempo was supposed to compensate for everything, but the tempo breaks almost immediately. Already on February 24th, the Ukrainian army engages in full-scale combat. The aggressor's aviation suffers losses. Columns stop. Communications work intermittently. February 24th, Hostomel. Attempt to capture the airfield by airborne forces. According to the plan, a key bridgehead for transferring heavy equipment in a rapid attack on Kiev. In reality, fierce battles, destroyed helicopters, personnel losses, and the failure of one of the central elements of the entire operation. Each downed helicopter, tens of millions of dollars. Each killed paratrooper. Years of training that cannot be quickly replaced. By the end of the second day, it becomes clear the Krieg has failed, and this automatically means an increase in the cost of war. Because modern war is not only the battlefield, it's logistics, supply, economy, and people who need to be constantly replaced. Russia entered the war with a peacetime army, with an economy not converted to wartime footing, with an expectation of minimal losses and limited sanctions. But Ukraine's resistance breaks the tempo, and loss of tempo in war is an exponential increase in costs. February 25, 26 sees the first mass losses of equipment: tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, artillery, hundreds of units in a matter of days. Each destroyed tank, from $3 to $5 million. Each trained contractor, years and tens of thousands of dollars. Each killed officer is a management failure that cannot be closed with money. February 26th, the command on the northern direction receives an order to continue movement toward Kiev at any cost, despite the lack of control over the flanks, fuel problems, and the failure of the political part of the operation. Columns stretch for dozens of kilometers. Logistics breaks down. Equipment stands idle. People find themselves without supplies. They planned isolated resistance. They got destruction of columns near Bucha, Irpin, and on the Zhytomyr highway. February 27, repeated attempts to storm Kharkiv, a city that, according to calculations, was supposed to open the gates. Instead, street fighting, heavy losses, and complete absence of strategic results. Urban warfare, the most expensive form of warfare. It was not included in any scenario. February 28th, a decision is made not to withdraw from Kiev, despite the obvious failure of the offensive. This is a key moment. After a week of battles without results, stopping the war would have meant admitting defeat. And defeat in the logic of an authoritarian system is unacceptable. From this moment, the war ceases to be an operation and becomes a trap. It is precisely here that the cost becomes irreversible. In the most simple sense, not philosophical, there's no going back without political losses. Forward, only through new victims, new money, and new years. By this point, Ukrainian society is fully engaged in the war. This is a factor that was not considered at all. Ukraine didn't just resist, it changed the very nature of the conflict. From a blitzkrieg, the war turned into a war of attrition, and Russia initially entered such a war with worse starting conditions. Each day of protracted war, billions. Already in 2022, Russia's direct military expenditures amounted to tens of billions of dollars. In 2023, military budget grew at the expense of cutting social programs, infrastructure, medicine, and education. The cost of war became systemic. They said sanctions are not scary. They got technological isolation and dependence on gray schemes. They said the economy will withstand. They got militarization and degradation of the civilian sector. They said this is temporary. They got a war in its 5th year. Today we can say with certainty, the cost of this war is not the result of a long conflict. It is the consequence of the first 7 days. Specific orders, specific names, specific decisions made in a distorted reality where the top politicians' own expectations turned out to be more important than facts. Russia lost not only on the battlefield, it lost in understanding whom it's fighting and what it's getting into. It didn't understand Ukrainian society, didn't understand the scale of resistance, and didn't understand how much it would cost. The cost of war is not only Ukraine's destroyed cities, it's also Russia's own destroyed opportunities, lost markets, lost technologies, lost generations. Men who could have been building the economy, creating businesses, developing the country, instead are dying, returning as invalids, or fleeing the country. War always has a bill. The only question is who pays it and how. In the Russo-Ukrainian War, this bill was presented already in the first week. Everything else is just interest on a debt that continues to grow. If you want to understand the modern world, you must learn to count the cost of war, not with slogans, not with emotions, but with numbers, decisions, and consequences, because that's exactly what the real causes and real outcomes look like. This was the first episode of the format, The Cost of War. And if you want a continuation, subscribe, because this bill is far from closed.